Okay. Good evening and welcome to Anupali. Thank you for joining me on this evening's program for another discussion on matters relevant to our country's development and to the advancement of our citizens. On this episode of Anupali, we'll discuss more options for young people to construct their own homes and achieve a higher level of independence. In our second segment, we will update you on the work of the National Health Commission and clear up some misconceptions about the proposed measures to improve our country's health services. Last week, I spoke with Dr. Alice King about the $10,000 grant being introduced by the government to give young people a head start in building their homes or owning a piece of our country. Undoubtedly, this is a great incentive, which is expected to encourage youth to make that bold move to home ownership to secure more comfortable lives for themselves and their families. Already, we are seeing high interest in the program, and I look forward to speedy allocation of the $1.5 million set aside for this initiative. With this new program due to come into effect on October 1, I thought it would be a good idea to follow up with an institution that is offering housing loans to public officers. The Government Housing Loan Board was established in 1957 under the provisions of the Government Housing Loans Ordinance, with the principal objective to provide loans to public officers for the acquisition of or construction of their residential buildings. The board is empowered by the ordinance to negotiate loans with domestic and other financial institutions. Since its establishment, the Government Housing Loan Board has obtained loans from various institutions of up to $255 million, all of which were guaranteed by the government of Dominica. I have with me the chairman of the Government Housing Loans Board, Mr. Felix Thomas, to tell us more. You're welcome to call in with your questions for Mr. Thomas on 225-3400 and 611-3400. Mr. Thomas, welcome to Anupali. It's a pleasure having you here. You've been around the vineyard of Dominica's development for
many moons.
All your life?
Many moons.
All your life?
Many moons.
And you've been the chairman for some time?
A long time.
Of the
Housing
Loan Board. From what year was it?
Well, we could say actually from 2000 because Mr. Dare was the appointed chairman, but his engagement never allowed him to really operate as such, and I had to carry on the responsibility ever since.
And I must say, I mean, as Minister of Finance, you have done a fantastic job, though. You and your members, and so we appreciate it very much of your service, and what I observe very much is your enthusiasm, your determination to push and to get more loans approved and more people having homes.
And I'll be seeking some.
All right. So the Government Housing Loan Board has been around since 1957. And one of the important tasks is to acquire funds to provide loans to public officers. I mean, can you give us some background about this entity? And also, what are some of the main objectives of the Government Housing Loan Board?
Well, first of all, let me thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for inviting me to share with the public what the Government Housing Loans Board have been doing over the years. And to answer your question, actually, that the Government Housing Loans Board, it is a statutory board, and as you quite rightly said, was established in 1957. Mm-hmm. So we're talking of some 63 years at present. The board provides loans for public officers who are desirous of building homes for themselves and their families. And the board seeks to provide that at affordable interest rates. One of the greatest impediments in mortgage financing, particularly for the construction of homes, have been that of high interest rates. And the board's main objective is to ensure that there is affordable and interest rates that are conducive for the construction of dwelling homes. We always say that you give a citizen a piece of the country and he will remain in the country. So our primary objective is to ensure that we grant loans to public officers who are desirous of building homes for themselves and their families.
Excellent. So what is the administrative structure of the board, or of the entity?
Okay, the government board, the board is appointed by the minister, and presently you are
the Minister of Finance.
Presently you are the minister, and
Yeah, but which minister though?
well, according to the board, it just says minister.
It's Minister of Finance.
Yeah, the Minister of Finance presently and Prime Minister, and we are happy to have a person, you know, in your portfolio as the Minister of the board. The board has a chairman, a deputy chairman, and 5 other appointed members. The board also is staffed with a senior administrative officer, and we have a loans officer, somebody who does most of the interviewing. We have an office attendant, and there is a junior clerk. In addition to that, we have an accountant, not on a day-to-day basis, but the administrative staff that I mentioned earlier on are responsible for the day-to-day functioning of the board. We also have a secretary that is appointed by the Prime Minister, and we also have support staff. For example, our technical persons, our IT person, and we have engaged our software provider that is who provides us with a DPAC system, that is an accounting system, to ensure that the board is at par and in keeping with the correct accounting principles.
So this is a relatively small structure with a huge mandate.
Huge mandate.
And you have been able to carry out those functions and responsibilities successfully, we'll say.
Yeah, well, the fact is the staff is very, very cooperative, very diligent, and that was even more so proven following Hurricane Maria. In fact, they were just on it from day one, seeing the matters that we had to deal with. We just could not have shut down the office. In fact, 2 days after, that was one of the first departments of government or government offices open and serving the public and running.
Now, government has provided loans to the Government Housing Loans Board for on lending to public officers. Can you tell the public how do you go about raising funds for the administration and functioning of the Government Housing Loan Board?
The Government Housing Loans Board depends largely on borrowing from financial institutions. But the Labour Party administration have taken certain initiatives that have really greatly assisted the board in providing services in terms of low interest financing services to public officers, particularly public officers who have been at the lower, bracket, income bracket, and more so the government through a 2% facility. There was the first 4% facility where the government granted, that is free money, $7.5 million to the Government Housing Loans Board for on lending at 4% on the reducing balance. Nothing could beat that, and that was in 2007. Following Hurricane Maria, there was a serious shortfall by insurance companies because in some cases that the houses, in fact, were not valued correctly by the adjusters. In other cases that the insurance gave some shortfalls in terms of payments that the clients could have received. And we were happy that the initiative again was taken by your administration to ensure that some $1.1 million in the first tranche could be given to assist public officers. As it relates to the 4% facility, we were able to assist well over 63 public officers at 4%. And with the 2% special facility, we were able to assist thus far 35 public officers. And believe me, that actually created an impact.
So that's good news. 63 loans out of the 4% facility, and 35?
And 35 out of the 2% facility.
Now, how many active loans do you currently have?
Okay. Presently in the regular facilities, so we have those facilities where the government have provided the sums for the special facilities, and then we have the regular facility where we borrow from other financial institutions. In that facility, there is 315 loans in that facility at the moment, and the other numbers that I mentioned. So totally, we can speak of some 405, there it is, or thereabout.
405.
Yeah, 5 loans, thereabout.
And this would have been for what period, though?
Well, the heights, the Government Housing Loans Board, truthfully speaking, before 2000 was dormant. And I remember the former Minister of Finance at one of our functions, said that the previous administration intended to just give up on the Government Housing Loans Board. But in truth and in fact, with the initiative taken by your administration, we had actually reinvented, the Government Housing Loans Board and have made it a giant, which actually created a domino effect in interest rates in the country. And I remember your statement very well when we met, I think it was at the public training center. That's upstairs, the post office where you granted the first $7 million. And you said, well, it's a small challenge to the other financial institutions to actually match up. Interest rates at the time, you must bear in mind, in Dominica, prior to 2000, was all up at a maximum height of 15%. And that just was not conducive in any mortgage facility. So this actually started that domino effect. So we were able to grant those loans at those low interest rates. But we needed your support. We got your support. Numerous loans, as you mentioned, well over $225 million. And that is not joke money.
So during that period, you've given out $225 million?
Okay, what we had to do what we call strategic financing. Yeah. I just want to recollect your mind because I had several discussions with you, and I remember you advised me to seek the help of, you remember Bernard Yankee? Yeah. And Mr. Morrow and Alec Lazar. Well, Alec Lazar is still around. So I had a lot of discussions with those men, and Mr. Yankee had just come from the Caribbean Development Bank. And sad but true, at that time we were facing in what we call austerity measures. And the debt incurred by the Government Housing Loans Board reflected the national debt of the country. And you were considering, look, how are we going to get this? But you were able to persuade the ECCB and the IMF because you asked them to meet with the board as well. You yourself, the financial secretary, and they gave you the green light, and we were able to borrow $23 million to refinance a loan that we have. I don't wish to really call the institution name, but that loan, that interest rate was just not conducive. So we had to borrow that $23 million. In addition to that, we borrowed $10 million. And it was not easy having to borrow that money, as I said, during those times of austerity measures. Because
all of these loans are guaranteed by the government.
Well, that is where, and any time government guarantees a loan, it reflects on the national debt. So sometimes when you hear people talk about, well, this country owing or the national debt, there is nothing wrong in borrowing once your debt is properly managed. And that is what we wanted to ensure, that we rewarded you with great and prudent financial management.
So the Government Housing Loan Board, it provides loans, offers loans to government employees. Who are the government employees who can qualify?
Okay, at the beginning, and that's a very, very interesting question. As I said, prior to 2000, it was selective, that only established officers could enjoy that facility. And there were many public officers at that time who could not have benefited from that Government Housing Loans Board facility. And the public officers who were qualified were those who were on the permanent establishment. Since then, again, an initiative taken by you to go to the Parliament and amend the Act so that persons who are employed, even though they are not on the permanent establishment, but they were able to source loans at those low interest rates as well. And we have seen many junior clerks, we have seen police officers, and this included officers who had worked for about a period of 5 years continuous service. So they as well were brought on board.
Okay, excellent. Now, we have a question from WhatsApp. We say, good evening. After meeting with an officer, how long does it take before one is informed of the approval or disapproval of the loan?
Okay, we have always tried our best. So the board meets once a month. Now, we do not have, as I said, an executive officer, but we have so structured ourselves that we meet in caucuses as regularly as possible, and we encourage the quick processing of the loans. One of the things that we want to ensure is that you have the capacity to pay back the amount that you are requesting. Your plans are in order, the proper assessment and valuations of the property if you're going to do buy.
So these are some of the requirements.
These are some of the requirements.
And they're documented.
They are documented
on the application form.
Yeah.
So the person knows the requirements before coming to you.
We hand them. In fact, we hand them a slip saying all what they are to bring in, including their salary slips. And once that is brought in, then the process in less than, let me just say, a month, because we have to carry out due diligence and seek credit reports. We also, as a board, visit the site. Though we send persons out on the field, and we have also engaged planning division. We work closely with planning division to ensure that nobody is building on anybody's boundary. We visit the site as well. Even prior to Tropical Storm Erica, the board had taken a decision to ensure that no building should be constructed in an unsafe area.
Now, what are the documents, though, that are necessary for the processing of an application?
Okay. As I said, that you need to have your salary slip.
Salary slip.
You need to have your proper ID, because we need to know who is it that we are dealing with. Your letter of appointment from your senior officer, certificate of title. That is approval plans from the planning division is also essential. Detailed estimates, and then with your plans we sit. It's a tough job, but the board members and I like the composition of the board. Very interesting, and persons who are committed. The valuation of the property with photo attached. As I said, credit reports, a loan facility. And if you're going to purchase a property, we would like to also have a letter of intent, from the seller. You need to have a little fee, not much, ready, so these processes can take place as well. So once you have all that, it does not take long.
So you're not one of those institutions that keep telling people come back and go back and
no.
You bring this document, you only need that document, you bring it, you say, well, you need more documents and so forth, no?
Well, I would be happy if some of the public officers call, because Number one, if you know Felix Thomas very well, I always say to my staff, and I'm not saying that as a criticism of the public service, you know, I said, while the public servant is a chain, that one person, something might delay because of one person's fault. In there, everybody work collectively, and there should be no delay. It's not a chain, and they have to operate speedily.
But what are the terms, though, like, of your facilities?
Well, actually, our interest rate, if you're speaking of interest rate, and we would grant you a loan at 5%. That is on the reducing balance. After your loan is approved, we would call you in. We would ensure that, as I said earlier on, you have the capacity. We look at your salary slip, and that you are able to do that. Once that is done, the terms that we would give you is within 25 years, we have the maximum. But we encourage people. One of the things that we do, we encourage people to pay up their loan as quickly as they can. For example, some persons may come, you may have 25 years to pay a loan because you are young, but we would encourage you, if you could pay a loan in a shorter period of time.
So it's the maximum time you give, 25 years?
25 years, yeah. But that depends on your age and your length of time in the service.
And there are no penalties for closing the mortgage earlier?
Oh, absolutely not. And that, I believe, is an illegal, I don't know, those who are listening to me, that's an illegal fact. I don't know how people are able to do that. In fact, my research have proven that the bank should pay you when you pay your loan.
Well, it's an agreement, it's an agreement.
An agreement must be legal, and it must be within the framework of the Constitution. It is unconstitutional.
I don't necessarily
it is
think so.
unconstitutional.
But we can argue that with the
I know it. I've researched it.
At some point and so on. So 25 years, 5% interest.
5.5 on the regular facility. 5.5 on the regular. The same thing for the 4%
so
facility.
4%.
The same thing for the 2% facility. And interestingly,
so you have 2%, you have 4%, you have 5%, and you have 5.5%.
Yeah. But our whole aim is to ensure that interest rates are no more than 4%. That is the aim. As I said, that we have done some strategic refinancing. We borrowed a total of $33 million. That 23 million chunk went into refinancing loans that were at a high interest rate. So we only have $10 million to actually give for new constructions. But if we, and I hope we are successful and will be again graced by you, with our appeal for an additional $25 million, all of which will go into the construction of new homes for the money.
So this $25 million you're putting before the Minister of Finance is to borrow from some financial institution?
A financial institution. And the rates are conducive. Very, very conducive.
So these rates will allow you to stay around the 5.5%?
5.5% to a time, and maybe I sent you time a projection, because as I say, we are not a bank. And we are not there for profit. We're not there for profit. But at the same time, what we have done is...
Why not take 15 now or 10? Why the full 25 though?
No, because truthfully, we have a request.
We have a request.
Yeah, we have a request for $22.9 million. So we do not want, by the time that keep on going...
You said to me, if you get this money, then you can put it back in the economy right away.
Right away. In fact, the construction industry, just like it did when we pumped in 10 million, when we pumped in 16 million, when we pumped in 22 million, you saw the business places were actually...
I'm asking this question for the purpose of the listening.
I know, I understand, and that's why I say I want to give you, the facts as they are.
For me, one of the, besides the 4% loans and the 2% loans, for me, one of the better memories I have and excitement about the government housing was the decision by the government to go to the parliament to amend the law to allow for non-established
Persons.
temporary public officers. Because what had happened was that we had launched this initiative to regularize squatters.
Yes.
And a number of daily paid or temporary or non-established public officers were squatters. And so they had the title now, but because they were not appointed, and
The
some of them
financial institution,
working for many years
yeah.
couldn't go to the credit, even if they had some savings at those financial institutions. And I said, well, if Parliament made the law, then Parliament can amend the law. And we went to Parliament.
And that's why I highly commend you for that, because it also helped to grow and push that initiative of the housing revolution, which you actually started around that time.
Well, I'm happy to hear. I mean, last week, for example, we announced, as you would have heard here, Dr. King, the Minister for Youth Empowerment, made the announcement of the $10,000 grant that the government is making available for new home owners and also property owners. The whole idea is to encourage young people to own a home and to own a piece of the rock, Dominica. How do you see the Government Housing Loan Board partnering with public officers who would like to take advantage of this 10,000? Will you go on a promotional drive?
Well, we have done that from time to time. In fact, we have held meetings and consultations with the Nurses Association. We have met with the Teachers Association. We have also met with the Police Welfare Association very early on. We met with various departments of government. We have sent out questionnaires, to various departments. One of the things that have been a setback for us, and we had to bid that system otherwise. By law, we are not permitted to advertise. So what we did was to have direct contact with public officers. And you would see on the list of persons who have borrowed from the Government Housing Loans Board, many nurses, teachers, police officers, junior clerks. And it's because of our constant meeting and dialogue with them. Also, we definitely will encourage the young persons, and you have many single parents below the age of 40 who have applications, with us. And what we're saying that the earlier that you can build your home, have part of that country, your young people are going to stay in that country. And I want to commend you again, sir, on that great initiative, And as I said early on, you did it with the Government Housing Loans Board, because without you, the Government Housing Loans Board would not have existed.
Well,
it not have existed.
If I may say, I'm committed to it because, it is my mission, as long as I'm Prime Minister of this country, to ensure that we can put as many families into homes as possible. And if in regards to this 10,000 grant, plus the reduction of the transfer fees, government fees, it's not that the government has money, doesn't know what to do with it. We need a lot of money. It's a challenging period for the government. Our revenues have been impacted. Our expenditure have increased, but we want to give a hand up to as many young people as possible, and wider society as well, hoping that they can use this opportunity to empower themselves. And I believe that in this period, the government, one of the government's responsibilities is to give hope in challenging times. And I'm hoping that all young people can take advantage of this. Sometimes people say, what are you doing for the young people and so on. We invest in education.
Trust me, they are. For example, many of the applications that we presently have, are persons within that sort of age group.
Well,
a lot of young police officers who have decided to make, the stay. But in addition to that, too, let me also state that apart from the actual construction cost, I heard you mention a reduction in the legal fees. Let us use a sum, let's say like 250.
Well, the government fees, the lawyers are negotiating.
I go into that.
So they asked me to reconsider this.
It's a 3%.
3%.
And then also there is also this 15%, that is added to it.
But for the government fees, we've reduced it by about 40%.
40%, which is good, because as it were before, you would, for example, if you are taking a loan of about $250,000, you would have to first meet a cost of at least $26,000. So that reduction that you spoke of, is actually another incentive, and that $10,000, you could see more of that money being spent actually in the construction and designs of the home.
So this is actually money we put into people's pockets, and our hope and prayer is that they can invest it or save it and not use it to buy consumables. That's my hope, but this is a democracy, and people are free
do what they want
to spend their money.
Well, there are two things people can do with money.
Yeah.
People, they save money. It means that your banks become more liquid and interest rates should go down, but that does not happen. The banks would rather to die with their liquidity. But they spend it, it means more money in the economy, more BICs and Aqua and those kind of things, sell. But the other part of it is the construction industry, the development of skills, It also encourages a lot of our young people to develop the skills, because if there is work to be done in the construction industry, there would be the need for skills, personnel. And I have seen that, and I myself am in the construction industry. It's just a sad thing. For the past month, just around the COVID, I had to let go about 34 of my employees. But I hope that this new drive would definitely pump in some money and redevelop, and activate the construction industry.
We have a caller, please. Hello? Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, sir.
Good night, Mr. Prime Minister. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I call from Pennsylvania. Is it that loan that only for public officers or any other person?
Yeah. Well, yeah, this one is the Government Housing Loan Board, so it is only for public officers.
Okay, well, I called in because I know that because of COVID, I out of job for some time, and then things that go rough with me, and I just built in my office of my home, and I cannot try to complete it now. So if I would get a loan to complete it, I would appreciate that very much.
Sure.
That's why I called you.
Yeah, but I could also call you as well.
You can call me?
Yeah, I'll give you a call tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right, my friend. All right.
Thanks so
All right.
much.
Yeah, God bless him.
Another crucial thing, Mr. PM, and again, when we met at the Public Service Training Center, and you ask what can be done with interest rate, that is where we actually, studied that off. And let me just use, for example, you contract a loan of $100,000, and on that loan of $100,000 at 2%, that is in relation with the 2% loan facility, you would be paying $423.85 monthly. Based on that total amount of payment that you would pay for a period of 300 payments, you would only pay back $127,155.
So
the save it fund.
So you saving.
And actually, you would only pay an amount of $27,155. Let us use that scenario and compare it with what exists at some institutions. And if you were to look, let's say, that same $100,000 at an interest rate of 5%, you would find yourself paying $84,000, $227 for the same period of time. Now, that's where the killer point is. And you still have institutions giving loans. They would tell you at 5.99 or this, but these loans, they go up. At 9%, you would have to pay back $251,700. In fact, $251,000, that is $151,760 more. So you see the effect of interest rate.
The government understands that, and this is why we've also provided, as you know, loans to the aid bank at 5%. We get them at 0% and to lend at 5%. So we recognize that. Now, you provide funding for construction from foundation up to roof and the person moving in. What other services do you provide? Loans for refurbishment or extensions?
Okay, definitely in the areas of homes, we provide for all aspects of home construction, refurbishing, reparations, because one may construct a home, and one thing about homes, they have to be maintained. And maintenance
and that
is at a cost.
That is a cost that we don't include.
Yeah, you know, it has to be maintained. And in addition to that too, families grow. At the time that the person constructs that home, they may leave the lower part of that home, but then the children start expanding and they want to use that section of that building. So we also give loans for that as well, for extension, because in certain cases, depending on the person's capacity to pay, we may advise them to do something that we call like a starter unit, and we will work and help you along. Okay. And there is a police officer, I'll not call his name, and I must say that so that people could understand what the Government Housing Loans Board, through your good services and the support that you have been given over the years, contracted a loan from another financial institution.
Can you hold your thought,
yes,
Felix?
Yes, go ahead.
Let's get a call, please. Caller, good evening. Hello?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
You go ahead, please. I'm hearing you now. But you're breaking up a bit.
Yes, Mr. Good night.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm not sure he's breaking up badly.
If he call again.
Please try to call again, my friend. And when you call in, turn off the television, or maybe you might want to be in a better location at your home. But we have a question here from WhatsApp. It says, "Good night, PM. Will I be able to transfer my land loan if I'm getting a mortgage with the Housing Loan Board?"
But of course, because one of the things that we do, we finance land, and we refinance your loan regardless to what institution that it is, and we give you the money to build that house.
Sure.
Importantly, we give 100% financing.
So you give 100% financing?
100%, because we are saying, look, why should we ask somebody to contribute 10 or 15%? They don't have the money. They don't have it. And sad but true, this percentage they're asking them to put up, they are contracting another loan.
Another loan, some.
You understand where I'm coming from?
At a higher interest
At
rate.
a higher interest rate.
You were saying about this police officer before I interrupted you.
And we have used them as a model. There are 5 persons now that we have on our model role. That police officer had a loan at a financial institution. All he was being asked to do is pay the interest rate. And he had been paying that interest rate for 5 years. You know, I wish he could call. I don't want to, but we looked at it, we discussed it, and I at that time, I want to remember great persons like Miss Williams, Sonia Williams, you know, and my brother Ed Regis, very compassionate people, said, look, let us look at the man's situation. We need to help him. And we said, he cannot pay exactly all of what, but we said, we're going to take over your loan. We're going to help you to manage it too. And they had stopped his building completely. So he was still renting, paying interest on a loan and still renting. We cut it down. We said, okay, pay what you can, cover some of your principal, and we're going to give you extra years, even when you would have left this service, because your gratuity is committed. So we took all of that into account to ensure that that money is secured. The man has paid his loan and has taken maybe 3 or 4 other loans from that institution.
And if you as you mentioned, paying rent, you recall in the agreement we signed with you, that's the government agreement with the Government Housing Loan Board, we included a grace period of about 6 months, I believe. because I recognize that many people who are building are also renting at the same time. And once you contract a loan with a financial institution, you have to start paying immediately. And I figured an average home should take about 6 months. I mean, you guys spend too much time on a home building in Dominica, but an average house should take about 6 months to build. And so this was a major plus because a number of people I recognize would not have been able to contract the loan and at the same time pay the
contractor, pay back the loan,
the rent at the same time. So that's important.
We adopt two things. What we do, in fact, the first sum of money given to you, you do not start paying the full amount of the loan. But again, we discuss with our clients. Right. We give them sound economic advice in terms of being not penny wise and pound foolish. As I say, that we encourage persons to pay their loans as quickly as they possibly can. And truthfully speaking, most and the vast majority of public officers have paid their loan, as they go along.
Okay. Says, good evening, my PM. Are employees of statutory organizations able to access these loans? The simple response to that question is no. But I believe we may need to look at this issue. Looking at DBS Radio is a statutory entity. You're talking about the port, the Dominica State College. We need to maybe look at the public sector or the public service rather than just the
little enclave.
Yeah, so it's something we need to look at. I mean, the same way we amended the law. I know we have to be careful because I don't like competing with the private sector, contrary to what one private sector person said. But I really don't like competing with the private sector. We only go into places where the private sector has not gone into. And we fill the gap, and if a private sector entity comes in to fill the gap. So I've been very careful about not competing with the banks and the credit unions because we don't want to put them out of business. And we do not want to, so we try to keep it as tight as possible in the provisions of loans.
Let me say, sir, that it's not out of a competition. The banks, for example, the Government Housing Loans Board is not a bank.
I mean, we have forced them to bring lower interest rates.
Which that domino effect, it was necessary. Because the more money the people of the country have to spend, it's more beneficial to the banks. But if you were to take a big chunk too much, you stifle growth.
Now,
you understand?
Yeah. So let's move along now. How much monitoring takes place, though? Because you have a small structure. You have to keep monitoring construction to ensure that that the funds are used for the intended purpose. So how do you go with monitoring construction?
Okay, we sometimes select teams or move in pairs or sometimes the entire board members, because sometimes what we do, we like to make our eyes boil over peas.
I know guys like you for energy.
Not only that, Mr. Chairman, if there is one legacy that John Felix Thomas want to leave behind, is a legacy of success. And I see too many success stories taking place in Government Housing Loans Board for there to be lapse. Okay. But we have a team of assessors whom we engage and we send them out. Okay. Now, we receive their report and we go through their report. If there are things that are not, too nice about the report, we visit the site. But our aim is to ensure that every public officer, even though you have a problem, even though you have failed before, even though you make a boo-boo, we don't just drop you off. We come. What we have done in certain cases, we have taken over the construction activity where we pay the contractor, we get contractors that are going to report directly to the board and ensure that the work is done. And that's what we institute, we call quality control as well.
Now, what are the fundamental differences between the service that you provide and that of the financial institutions, the banks and the credit unions?
That's a very good and interesting question. The Government Housing Loans Board, as I said, is not a bank, but a financial institution. While we give mortgage financing, we do not have what we call deposits. People do not save money into that institution. Whereas at the banks, people put in their savings. So the bank has that advantage where it can use from the people's money, give it back to them at an interest rate of 9, 10, you know, whatever percentage that it sees fit. In term, give them as the regulated amount minimum by the ECCB 2% on that same money that they put in. With the Government Housing Loans Board, it borrows for on lending. And in our case, if we borrow at X, our spread is minimum, very, very, very minimum. Because whilst we get that low interest rate, we ourselves also reciprocate in ensuring that the bank does not say, well, or the institution does not say, hey, we give you your money at our money at X and you have an interest rate much higher than us.
I see.
You understand? So we do that. And it's much more difficult to manage a mortgage institution than a bank. Because there you have to watch every single dollar, every single time.
Now, removing your bias and so on, why should a government employee favor the Government Housing Loans Board over a bank or credit union?
Okay, let me stick my bias higher because I am dogmatically and beyond cavil bias. There are many reasons. As I said, you get 100% financing. You don't have any collateral, nobody to sign up for you.
I see.
With the exception that if somebody else's name is on the certificate of title, that person must come and sign as a or joint tenant, you know, or owner of that certificate of title. In addition to that, you don't have all of that protocol and go and come. Everybody knows everybody within the public service, and the Government Housing Loans Board sees itself as the how you call it, the savior of the public service when it comes to that service, because the public service plays an important role. Hence the reason why you took the initiative and ensured that the Government Housing Loans Board had money that it could provide the necessary financing to public officers whose homes were destroyed. You want them to come back to work. How could they come back to work if they're still on their tarpaulin and those sort of things? So there is this thing where they are able, in very short and quick time, get the monies that they are really asking for, and without favor, without prejudice.
And so you're saying that you are more empathetic than the other institutions?
Very much more so. I mean, you just let them go. I mean, over the years, for the past 20 years, I mean, the vast majority of public officers who have taken loans with us have paid their loans. Some of them have even come back and take loans for extension and addition to their homes.
We'll take this final question on WhatsApp, and it says, a blessed night. What is in place at your institution in cases where, for whatever reason, someone's salary, as it is, can't comfortably make the mortgage payments? Is there a consolidation process, or are there other financial deductions?
Yeah, that's why we ask you to bring your salary slip. But even before I go directly to that question, we have also always warned people. I'm not going to mention institution names, but I call them money pockets. How I call it? I don't say but I say quick money.
We can skip
this
that side,
money, right? You understand? And we always warn persons, don't engage themselves in those things. However, we see the need for that person to have a home greater than their failure to adopt good practices. And we work along with them, ensure that they are given an amount, and then we have what we call stay alone. That is, we would stay certain payments until your commitment to that other institution is fulfilled, and then you start paying back.
That's interesting.
You know,
that's very interesting.
We think wide, you know, we think wide.
That's excellent.
You know.
Well, I'm happy to hear this. Now, any general advice for prospective
of course, come quick to the Government Housing Loans Board, because I am sure that the Prime Minister, being very satisfied, as he has confessed, you know, is going again to make available our requests, and the necessary guarantees will come. Hopefully, God is good all the time.
All the time.
that we are able to give greater service, and that this $25 million can really encourage. Once they know money there, you know, they are going to come even in greater droves. And have no fear, Mr. PM. You have seen the success story of the Government Housing Loans Board. You get our financial statement. When we took over the Government Housing Loans Board, it had less than $15,000. Today, in terms of our capital yield, most of which we have plowed back, we are touching the $7 million mark. And that is why we are saying at a point in time, the government would have to guarantee no loans to the Government Housing Loans Board, because there would become the slow period, because you have new generations of public officers that will be coming on board. But it would, from its own funds, through its accumulated fund over the years, you know, would be able to meet and finance loans and for public officers.
Just finally, from the institutions which you've borrowed, how much do you pay back each month?
We pay a total of $172,000 monthly. Yeah.
And as I understand it, you have
never defaulted, not on one single payment. We ensure that we continue to make growth while we have granted certain waivers. We do all of that.
I mean,
based on the
you granted waivers, you suspended the loan payments as a result of Maria.
To public. What we did, and again, I want to, too much praise is not good for you, but you must take it, sir, okay? Because one of our chief points in discussing with public officers is that no public officer can come to the board and say they have not gotten their salary. Your government have continued to pay public officers their salaries. And we have always stressed that point to them. If you're getting your salary, you have not lost your job, you have not lost your income, then convince us, you know, convince the board that you need. We have done that in certain cases where when we carry out our full exercise, it is not just a free-for-all. We do that, I don't want to use the word selective, but based on merit. We ensure that there is a need, because as far as we are aware, no public officer have not had an income, not as Maria, not as a result of Erica, not as a result of COVID-19. But there were some public officers who had their children studying overseas. They had to meet additional costs of those students that they had overseas in bringing them. So we gave waivers in certain cases of that. Coming back quickly to the point with the statutory boards. We, in cases, what we have done, you may have persons working for statutory corporations and one person working within the public service. So while we don't go carte blanche, because we're still waiting on your blessing, and you will get a request, a letter from us to allow, you know, for that. We'll join that up. So we join those sort of things together and give them the loans. And
that's fine. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas, and please convey my regards to the staff. I know Ms. Barron, right?
Very great and good staff. Very good.
Lady.
Mistress Roberts. And you had taken one of my staff from me. She came back voluntarily. She came back. She said, you know, she actually said she enjoyed working with you, but that's where her neighbors speak, and she liked the entire exercise.
So we want to thank you. Of course, you have before the Minister of Finance a request for a guarantee of $25 million. I can't speak for the Minister of Finance in this program, but I am sure that he will give urgent and immediate attention to this request that is on his desk. So when I see him this evening, I shall speak to you about this on your behalf.
I'm going to have a very good night rest. Thank you.
But thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and thanks for making the time today.
Pleasure talking to you.
All the best, sir. Thank you. We shall take a short break, and we'll come back for the second segment of this Anu Palace program. Thank you very much.
I farm here at Glasgow. That's above the Font Collet. I've had the land for over 40-something years. I purchased it in 1976. Presently, we do mainly vegetables and livestock, poultry, to be more exact. Under the vegetables, they do quite a bit of it in the greenhouse, which we're under right now. And at one time, we did mainly lettuce. We've done it in boxes above the ground, simply again because we saw into the future in that. We're trying to avoid having to bend down on the regular beds. And secondly, another advantage of the boxes, the fact that they're raised, you can have them wider. And as a result of that, you have less footpaths, so you're planting more area than the normal thing. From after Maria, we got some damages with the greenhouse, and we haven't really got fully in gear with it. Because at one time we put out about 800 heads a week. What another thing we did, again, we started that about 20 years ago. We had gone into exotic fruits, and we had a variety of about 48 imported fruits. And well, Maria took its toll on that one. And I bargained for the bigger tools, like the brush cutter, the earth auger, chainsaw. So all of them can't come to mind, but basically I focus on the heavy tools. So basically this is what our life in Glasgow is right now, you know, and I hope that in the near future we can really pick up the momentum we'd like to and carry on. And I can interject here with the president of the World Bank. That gives you the encouragement, and I hope the impetus will come in later on.
I am Alec Athanas, and I'm from the village of Granby. I want to say that I am farming since 25 years, and that's a thing I keep enjoying. But since after Hurricane Maria, I had a loss of plants, and I had to restart. I always require to have a reasonable amount of plant, which at this time I don't have the amount I wanted. I had to, from what I had during the hurricane, I had to distribute and give to many farmers. Because why? I want some farmers to come on the line that they can have also. I do not want me to be the only farmer. And so I think in that, I do the tanya, I do the ginger, and I do the yam, I do plantain, I also do sweet potatoes, not even regular, but I do sweet potatoes. And I've been doing pretty well. So I think at that point, as this World Bank thing came up there, that was a brighten up for a person like me. That it enhanced me, that the tools I've gotten there, and the fertilizers and the chemicals is just going to brighten me a little more. So I just keep shopping up and planting and opening up the place. It's like life has come up to me. As I said, one of those times, guys, like you were somebody, I was somebody drowning, and some hand just came out and took me from under the water and brought me up and gave me life. And I saw that is what the World Bank has been doing for me personally. It has have me up, and in every area the World Bank looks into and to help the farmer. I am so pleased and so glad about it. So I just keep doing everything that I see possible to do. And the thing I have in focus, again, is to encourage farmers. If one farmer says anything bad, that this farmer is just a farmer by name, but not a real farmer, because you cannot say anything bad about that. No, you can't say that. I have said to you, it's exciting to be part of that and to know that the World Bank cares about people like that, in that category.
Welcome back to Anupali. For the second part on this program, I want to focus on the work of the National Health Commission. The commission, established in 2017, is charged with improving the management structure of the government's hospitals, developing systems that ensure accountability at all levels of management, and attracting and retaining qualified and able professionals to perform key functions. Since the first appearance on Anupali in late June, the Commission has undertaken several public awareness activities and is continuing consultations with various stakeholders. We have also heard various concerns in the public about the changes proposed by the Commission and wish to take this opportunity this evening to address some of these concerns. I've invited His Excellency Mr. Eliud Williams and Dr. Donald Peters of the National Health Commission to speak with us this evening. Gentlemen, good evening. Your Excellency, welcome back. Dr. Peters, welcome.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, PM.
We're happy to have you here.
Thanks.
You've been making the news, the Health Commission.
Very active.
Everything is okay.
Yes, we're staying busy.
Now, before we get an update on what you've done over the last 3 months since we met, I think it might be useful, Your Excellency, to speak about the objectives of the National Health Commission.
Thanks, PM. And good night to listeners and viewers. The first thing would be, and importantly, in fact, I'd like to recall a session you had with the Commission on 2nd March 2018, when you outlined the government's policy view and position about the situation in health and the need for improvements. So essentially, perhaps the most important one was the need to improve the quality of healthcare throughout the system, throughout Dominica. We were asked to take a look at various reports and studies that had been prepared on Dominica's health services. PAHOS had done a lot of that work in particular, so we focused on that. We were also asked to take a look at international standards in healthcare, so that the care we give is not something which is something limited to Dominica. It is something, although we are a developing country, we were going to aim to give healthcare which is of an international standard. And so that was already as well embodied. We were also asked, in whatever we do, to ensure that there is transparency, accountability, and in particular, good financial management. And so these were, in very broad terms, the main purposes. And as we got towards the end of last year, because of the situation at the hospital, in particular, the new hospital being constructed, the Commission was asked to focus its attention on the hospital, and in particular, a new governance structure for the hospital. So really, over the last year, that's where we have been focusing.
So how do you envision, though, the measures being proposed will improve the administrative structure of the hospital services?
Yeah. Well, ma'am, you made reference to the work we've been doing, the consultations we've been having, but I also need to go back a little bit and to say, as a commission, we had hearings over an extended period. We met and spoke with more than 140 people and organizations about healthcare in Dominica. And in particular, there was concern about the quality of care at the hospital. And generally, in fact, it was more like 73% of the people whom we consulted, and that's as a commission before we got to hospital as an interim board, said that there is need for improvement in the delivery of care and quality of care at the hospital. So that was, of course, for us very, very important. The present situation at the hospital is one whereby you have what we refer to as a triumvirate. You have 3 managers at the hospital: a hospital services coordinator, a medical director, and the matron. Each of these people report to a different person at the ministry. We're saying that cannot work. In fact, it has never worked. And if you're going to improve the quality of healthcare, you need to start there. Interestingly enough, when we hear comments in the public domain about quality improvement, we haven't heard anything about the issues of accountability. And we are saying, as a first step, as a very first step, you need to bring the decision making much closer to where it's happening, and that is at the hospital. So that if a spare part is required to get the theater running again, we should not have to have one person making the request to a higher person at the hospital, and then it goes to the ministry, and the ministry to the Ministry of Finance. The system we are proposing will make it much better to have things like that resolved in very, very quick time, because essentially the idea will be to have decision making much closer to where it actually matters.
I agree with this. Now, Dr. Peters, what are some of the activities that that you have taken to meet your objectives?
Well, Prime Minister, we've been very busy. We have drafted the legislation that will govern the authority. We've developed the organizational structure that will manage the hospitals, and we've created the job specifications for for the CEO and all of the senior management team, and we met with consultants. And more importantly, we've met with all of the leaders and the managers in the hospital, currently in various groups, and we are in the process of repeating that process so that we can meet with as many as possible in every department, including maintenance, housekeeping, dietary, so that the people can ask us the questions directly. And so we've been, it's a lot of work, but I think it's necessary, as your mandate asks us to do, to ensure that what we're trying to create is not unique to Dominica, as the Excellency has pointed out. We want to have a system of delivering hospital care with good outcomes, where it's systemic, so we don't have to say it's Mr. that do that. It has to be systemic. If you go to a hospital and you have a broken ankle, and if I go and you go, the system must be the same. The process must be the same. It's called a procedural manual. There should be in ER, know how to deal with it. So we're getting close to this. And I think the good thing, Mr. Prime Minister, is that the hospital workers we've spoken to all want that change. Because as you can hear about the triumvirate of how you report 3 different people to 3. So accountability is not there. They don't get rewarded. The good workers don't get rewarded. All of them are judged the same way. You need a system where the CEO and the division, the head of nursing, know who are good people and can reward them.
Yes. So. No, you, as you said, you're having a number of consultations with various stakeholders. Yes. How are these consultations going?
In fact, this has been going very well. In fact, it was, I think, on some urging from you in June, that after just about the time we appeared on Anu Pale, we started a sensitization program. And we were, in fact, on all the radio stations. We were on Kyrie, we were on DBS twice, we were on Q, we were on Vibes. We were literally all about saying to the Dominican public, what is it we want to achieve? And Dr. Peters perhaps just omitted to mention, during this last few months, we've also been looking at what is a very important thing to the Dominican people, the issue of admitting privileges and the use of hospital facilities for private practice. That for us is also key, because what has happened essentially in the past is that the small group controls the theaters. And so we keep saying that has to change. Public patients must have priority in a public hospital. And we are putting arrangements in place to ensure that if you start the process of care or seeking care as a public patient, you must have priority to get that care at a public hospital. Of course, there will be instances where you must consult or you must go to private facilities, because the private facilities complement the public facilities. So yes, we did this sensitization program, and more recently we have started consultations on the legislation. In fact, we developed a list of nearly 50 maybe like 47 various organizations that we wanted to consult using Zoom. We probably achieved maybe an 80% success. There is an issue, of course, and we will mention later on with DPSU, where there was some communication issues. But it is important to mention that we recognize DPSU as a critical stakeholder, and therefore, as early as February last year, we first engaged DPSU on the changes that have been going on there and the changes that were proposed. But more recently, there was some communication issue. So they couldn't come on the Zoom consultation the date they were given. Another date was given, and then we are hearing they didn't get the Zoom reference and so on. But that we will come to. But yes, we are continuing. In fact, we took the view, and very strongly, that although we're having the Zoom consultations and a lot of discussion, a lot of points were raised there, a lot of observations, the medical association stood out, the nurses were here, the midwives, the pharmacists, technologists. I mean, we consulted members of the private sector as well. So we've been talking to a lot of people, and essentially what we're hearing is there is need for change. We need to put these changes in place. Later we will talk about the rights of workers and of course the privileges. So
No, I mean, as you referenced, we've heard concerns raised in the public domain. You know, and I think that there's a need for us to discuss these concerns. We heard officially from the DPSU, for example, they have raised the questions about the fate of professional workers under the new arrangements. How does the Commission react to this?
yeah, well, we certainly, to make the point, we will certainly continue the consultation and the engagement. In fact, in the case of DPSU, we like to refer to it as engagement, because besides our first sessions in February of last year, we have had other sessions with them. Interestingly enough, when we had these consultations, we didn't hear that coming from the professionals. Nobody said that. So the issue of contracts, and I imagine you would want to ask us about that, that came up even before the DPSU raised it. And we explained that the thinking then was we were going to link this, because in the new arrangements, as all part of the change, because there are in fact 3 other bills, medical professionals, pharmacists, nursing professionals, that we are consulting on, that the arrangements for registration and licensing will be different. Today, what we have had is a registration and no licensing. So we had made this link with the licensing. We're hearing from the consultations and from the PSU, albeit very recently, that this will create some problems. So clearly, it was never the intention to put professional workers out of work. I don't know how this is possible. Yeah. It's just not. But so we're saying we've been spending time looking at the comments during the consultations, we'll compile them, and we're quite open, absolutely, to look again at the issue of these contracts and to see how perhaps we could do it differently, to link. Because very importantly, the issue of having professionals stay on the cutting edge of their profession was not something ever spoken about within our hospital and healthcare delivery system. We are saying in the new arrangements that has to be, and we're open to suggestions on how this can happen.
Just a piece on that. And you asked us to fix the thing. All of the reports that we've looked at, including, I did a study for Prime Minister Charles in 1989.
Well, I didn't ask you to fix it. The public has said to me that there are some concerns. We need to fix it. So I brought in, I believe, an A-team.
Right. So you do that. But in terms of employment, our objective is not to put anybody out of work. Healthcare workers are the most lucrative jobs in the world. There'll always be jobs. But there are things like fixed-term employment, long-term employment, mobile employment. These are all parts of things that healthcare people, that's why the Medical Association will find talking with us. Healthcare workers are important, but they have a lot of options. So what we're doing as the Excellency said, we will relook at this contractual terms of fixed terms, and certainly we can adjust them.
Yeah. I mean, the DPSU has also raised the issue of whether workers will be able to secure appointments under the new arrangement. I mean, how does the Commission respond to this, though?
Well, there's nothing in the act that says that we won't, and we are using the Dominica State College model, which happened before, where state workers 2002 became Dominica State College employees.
Everybody who was employed,
they transferred
with the various colleges,
and they kept their benefits.
Were public officers.
Yes.
And the law made provisions as to how to treat with these people.
And we use the exact law in there. So
using the same model, essentially.
But we'll get it, and we've spoken with the drafter on this. Because again, in fact, interestingly enough, you will recall there was a certain insistence that we from you that we consult widely.
Yeah.
In fact, the last of the Zoom consultations was with parliamentarians who were not in the cabinet.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the leader of the opposition there, Mr. Linton, asked, why are we really consulting them since the legislation must come to Parliament? And we're saying we are consulting because what is out there is a draft. We need to hear from as many stakeholders as possible. And then the follow-up question was, will there be changes? And we say, of course. If we are consulting, the purpose is to have improvement. And I can't recall, and I have lived here all my life, except perhaps a few years for overseas studies, when there was another piece of legislation or government policy position where there has been so much consultation. And we are saying we're going to continue talking, we're going to continue engaging. But if the first thing we hear is postpone, delay, we're saying let's keep talking, let's keep engaging. If we get to that point where we need a few more weeks, by all means, but you do not start by saying let's postpone. Just postpone and delay. Why? There must be a good reason and sufficient reason why you're postponing. We're saying if we can deal with the issues, let's deal with it. Because whenever you speak to people in this country, and all of us must get to the hospital at some point, for one reason or another, and if not as a family member, they say to you there is need to improve the quality of service there. And the government provides about $30 million a year to run the hospital. It's going to be more because we'll have more buildings, more will be needed. About 77 to 80% of that money is used to meet staff costs, salaries, wages, allowances, and other benefits. So you cannot really improve service quality without having a good hard look at the human resource. And so in the new structure, for the first time, we will also have a human resource manager. Because if the government is spending $30 million of the taxpayers' money, the least the taxpayer can do is to have a right to expect quality of service.
So, I mean, the DPSC has also raised the concern about the implications for the employees in terms of their benefits. Do we see with this new arrangement that the benefits will be impacted at all? Dr. Peters?
We are very clear that the people who transfer are seconded, they transfer all their benefits, including the retirement benefits and all of the things that they currently have in the public service.
So as I understand it, the people will be given a choice.
Yeah. Yes.
Those who are currently public officers, if they want to remain as public officers, then they will be seconded to the authority.
You come in first. We need to arrange to ensure hospital.
Nobody will be moving. They'll stay there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but you have to second them. Second them to as we did with the state college. Everybody stayed put.
Yeah. Right.
And people will regularize one way or the other.
Airport services to support. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to stay with the authority, they can stay with public service.
There will be a 2-year period in which for them to do that.
A caller, please. Hello, good evening.
Good night to the Prime Minister.
Good evening to you.
Mr. William, Mr.
Good afternoon.
I heard you all talking about your contact people to give input on health, what you're doing. But you all didn't invite Dominica National Down Syndrome Society in to lobby for Down syndrome people. So what I want you all to do for us, please, try and get a specialized clinical psychology. Because if you need one for one of the children or the youth, especially to deal with their education, you have to travel out of Dominica. If you have 3 or 4, sometimes you don't get it in the same country. You have to go to different countries. And we the parents don't have that type of money. So if you all could get specialized people to put at the hospital, and then you put a board saying where you have that type of facility. We have this, so we the parents will feel more comfortable because our children rest out when it comes for those type of intervention, like speech therapy and other things to do with them, because they are special children. They are not like the other type of disability, so they too need that type of service.
Yeah.
And Mr. Prime Minister, I want to tell you, Dr. King and you, I'm begging that you all put legislation in place to protect people with Down syndrome, all ages.
Thank you.
Because when the other people say they're going to lobby on their behalf, they're left out, they are rejected. So please call me in or call the people from health promotion, because they're always on the radio with me doing awareness on Down syndrome. And so many years I talked to them, and then nothing not really taking place for them. So please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, caller. She's been a very consistent and strong advocate for Down syndrome, and we've taken note of the suggestion, and of course, the association will certainly be consulted, and we will reach out to get the contact information. But very passionate advocate, and we really appreciate this. Now, one of the main issues, as I listen to the public, that they're raising, is the proposed 3-year contract that will be offered to hospital employees.
Professionals.
To professionals, hospital professionals. They're concerned about security of tenure. How do we react to this?
Yeah, PM, I thought I made the mention just perhaps in passing.
Yeah.
It is there. It is an issue to be addressed. We said even before the PSU put it in the public domain, it was the public consultation of the 3rd of September. Somebody raised it. I think it may have been from nursing or midwifery, raised it, and the union in its letter of the 14th also raised it. What we said, and it was also raised by a caller in the simulcast session of the 15th of September, where we linked up on all the radio stations. That was raised, and we said at the time, the thinking was, since the professionals will now have a new system of registration and licensing, and a condition of having your license renewed every 3 years was going to be the need for continuing professional education. So we thought this may be a way to do it. We are now saying, we've heard these concerns, and absolutely it is something we're going to look at again, because if it is going to be part of concern, we're saying let's look at it, let's see how we can do it differently.
So, but as I understand, I mean, you have draft bills.
Yeah.
And in this case, the draft hospital authority bill, and you are meeting with a wide range of stakeholders. You are not making the changes as you go along. You're consulting, you're taking note, because I recognize that you consulted with the cabinet, the cabinet made some observations, but they have not been reflected in the document that you're discussing with the public. You're waiting for it to come out.
Very true.
So what is required is for people to submit. I have issue with clause 42A.
26.
I would like to suggest that this clause be removed and replaced with these words. That kind of engagement.
PM, you're so right. The Nursing Council has done that very well on the issue of, because all the new acts have provision for complaints procedures. So they have said, does it mean that every infringement must go to a tribunal? And obviously, the way the draft is now, it would appear so. But you don't want every infringement from a nurse going. So yes, absolutely, that is it. And this is what I'm saying. It was already raised even before DPSU, because we won the simulcast on the 15th. In fact, it was a well-known caller. He said, please look at that again. But we can't, every comment we have had, we consulted more than 40 different organizations. And it's been taking time to put it together. But once these things come to bear. That's why, in fact, we wrote again to the particular union and said, you may very well have suggestions and recommendations. And we say, well, no, almost like, no. So you're absolutely right, PM. This is how we are proceeding. We're pulling all of these observations together. We are speaking with the drafter, both external and our Chief Parliamentary Counsel here. We will do revision, and we will obviously have to come back.
We're hearing from trade unions that the administration of the hospital should remain the responsibility of the state. Will the new act, it's a bill now, but, will it take away the state's responsibility?
Unless you can tell me where we'll get the 30 million, because we are counting.
It's a state's hospital.
It is, and we've said that over and over.
And we manage it
over and over. It's going to remain. I couldn't see it otherwise.
Because and there's some people who say, well, there's some people who say, well, there is too much mention of the minister.
We heard that, which is really precisely at one consultation we heard that. It's a ministerialization of healthcare. We're told.
So the idea behind this is ready to respond to the criticism of the public about the need to improve on the delivery, the administration, the management of healthcare at our national hospitals.
Yeah. So absolutely, the hospital is a public hospital. It is going to be managed. That is the thinking. Which, and Dr. Peters alluded to that earlier. This is not something new. Trinidad has done it. Barbados has done it. Antigua has done it. St. Lucia has done it. If you go to Turks and Caicos, you go to Singapore. Worldwide, the trend is to let hospitals be managed by professionals so that you can get the best of care. And from very early we've said, and it was your policy wish, that we take a stand to move it towards international standards. So accreditation, we already started talking to Accreditation Canada. And it's a process we reckon will take about 3 years. And that's why I said earlier, we are only going to achieve success if we tackle. And today, I mean, it's no secret, nobody is accountable for anything at the hospital. Some people may not like us to say that, but this is the truth. We can give several examples, but we have a situation in one of the departments. If so many units of whatever that department deals with leaves the unit to go to the wards, they send out 25, maybe 20 come back. What happened to the other 5?
Sorry, Your Excellency, let us take a call, please. Hello, caller, please.
Good evening, Mr. PM.
Good evening to you.
To you and your guests.
Good evening.
This is my second time trying to reach you. I'd like to have a discussion, a very important
discussion. Okay.
That's all fair.
We will take your number and make contact with you, okay?
Please, urgent, so thank you.
Sure,
sir.
all the best. God bless you.
Looking forward.
Yeah, sure, God bless you. I mean, I personally support this movement. I've always held that it is not fair to the citizens of Dominica and to the hospital staff, the doctors, the nurses, the hospital administrators, for them to have to go through this whole bureaucratic red tape to get simple things. I mean, the MRI or the scan is down, or the X-ray machine. I mean, they have to send the requisition to the ministry, and sometimes it gets there and people say, well, we have to buy a part for a vehicle and we can't buy this now and we can't pay for this now. And this thing's delayed. I mean, a hospital is about life and death. And I think that whatever actions we need to take as a country to improve on the administration of healthcare in Dominica, we should do it. And my view is that we have tried this so many times before. You're much older than me, you gentlemen. And you've been in the system for a very long time. When I look at the records, we've attempted this a number of times in the country, and we have not succeeded. And I am concerned that if we miss this boat now, we will never be able to catch it again. And ourselves as older persons and succeeding generation would be the worst off. And I think we have to learn to put our petty differences aside and to look at the greater good. In
fact, PM, as you say this, in fact, in the legislation, even though some people say there's nothing progressive in there, we are pursuing the WHO thinking and model. Where at Section 4.3I or 1, we have had in the draft embedded that no one must be denied care because you cannot
Of the
pay.
inability to pay.
Of the inability to pay. So there is reference to fees because at present there are people with health insurance who may be able to make a contribution. But there is a exemption policy in place, which is something for the government, for your cabinet, which the board must observe. And it is saying, if you are 60, when we look at the costs, you may decide, since Social Security, a number of things are changing. Do you want to move it from 60 to 62 or so on? Or you're under 18, you'll be exempted. And we've gone further to say that you cannot be denied care because you are unable to pay. We will cost the care, and we will say, this is what it costs to do so much. Mr. Prime Minister, you have exempted it, but here is the bill, so you know.
Yeah. Just for the records.
Records
Right.
and for planning.
So
planning
for your government
purposes.
can know how much it costs them a year to deliver.
Yeah, because the point we've always made to people is that you receive the care for free.
Yeah.
But
for the cost
but somebody
associated.
pays for it.
Yeah.
And that person is the treasury.
Yeah.
So people think it's free, that, why this medication is free. No, it's free to you. But it was paid for.
Yep.
And that is the cost it is paid for. And you want that information, that statistical information for planning.
Precisely.
Budgeting,
Yes.
etc. Now, there's a question from WhatsApp. Says there has always been a lot of concern about government interference in the management of our hospitals. Now that an effort is being made to deal with those concerns, some of the very people who have been talking about interference by ministers and other politicians are now expressing the opposition to that commendable initiative. Could His Excellency comment on this? See, they give you the tough question.
Yes, in fact, we as we said, we had hearings, we met people. So it is not something that the government or any group just overnight came up with. People have been saying we need to do better, and I'm saying we can do better. In fact, at every forum I have said, there's some excellent work that goes on at PMH. Sometimes people forget that. There's some excellent work. But there's also some poor and shoddy work. And I'm saying that cannot be. So I hear that as well. And no, it's not just interference by ministers. We're hearing it's interference by people who are retired. What they're not able to say, however, is those who have been retired and are making this contribution have had significant public sector management experience and excellent qualifications and so on. So yes, we are seeing that because presumably, and in fact we heard it, let's leave things as they are. People have not been accountable, so let's continue. But that can't be. We can't continue to spend $30 million, and it will be more because you have 9 buildings, thanks to the government of China, who are giving us this wonderful gift. But the gift will come at a cost. The equipment, the personnel, and going back to the point was raised earlier, in this new law, we have made provision for new interventions through telemedicine. And we're saying as well, for certain things, you do not necessarily have to have someone on the permanent staff. We can get sessions. So you have this trauma surgeon, or you have only 2 weeks ago, one of our top people in the UK said, I would be willing to assist. So just please add me to your register. And that's something we're also doing, creating a register of Dominican professionals who are out there. We can't pay you what you would earn in the UK and the US, but you may be willing to do this as a contribution. Or we can stay in radiology department from here and speak to someone in Australia who's looking at the image because the capacity is there for the internet.
No, there's talk that the unions may be fearful of the diminished role, especially where collective bargaining is concerned. Do you have any reaction, Dr. Peters?
Well, yes. Every union is scared to lose members, and I think in any the change, if the hospital is asking for accountability and the professionals are interested in the licensure, registration, and mobility, we have this notion that everybody want to be working the same job for their lives. They have bright physicians who we realize as a board that we have to try to keep our physicians and our nurses. So where they see people wanting permanency, the people are not asking for this, but the union has its own businesses to get people to pay dues so that they can pay their salaries. I understand his concern. Nothing the union secretary have brought out there is in the act. We have 52 clauses, 51. He picked one, number 26, 26.2. And that is minor, as His Excellency say, we can fix it. But down the line, he would have to deal with health workers managing them. And they're very complex people to manage. And so we are not, the board, the authority, sir, is not involved in eliminating unions. In fact, the laws of Dominica give every worker the right to be represented.
So the idea is for us to try to separate the issues. Let us look at the fundamental issue that's before us, that is the objective of seeking to improve healthcare delivery and services in our country, and then there are associated issues where one can give consideration to, but we should never try to mix the two.
Yeah. In fact, this week, PM, just to say, we have met, and Dr. Peters mentioned that we have met some sectional heads at the hospital. This week, as part of the process, and continuing the consultation, we will meet all categories of staff to hear from them again. What are your concerns? You know, this is the draft, we've given it to you. What are your concerns? Tell us. As we say, a lot of the people who have come to the consultations, especially the professionals, have said, in fact, we know what we are hearing is some of the people who work at the hospital are saying, you'll have been here for a while. When is that change coming? We've been waiting now for a year. We're hearing, when is the change coming?
So the idea is to continue engagement of the unions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Concerns are raised, and you will fetch.
Because they need to have the real information. So rumors fly all the time. People stop me in the market. They say, "But Dr. Peters, you guys are doing a good job." But the same thing about the state, they wanted to know that. They say, "Soccer, whether we go and make people buy it."
Caller, please. Good evening. Yes, sir. Okay, caller. Yeah. I mean, certainly, I will never support the privatization of our lone hospital.
No, you can't.
This will not meet my approval at all, and this is not the intention at all.
They couldn't afford it.
The intention is to create a statutory entity that will be fully funded by the state. The authority will be able to raise additional funds on its own, but short-circuit the bureaucratic red tape.
And you save money that way.
That's right.
Because if you have management directly at the hospital, it's cut costs.
And there's a very important question on WhatsApp. It says, good night, PM. How does the health centers and other hospitals like Marigot fit into this new legislation/system?
It's a hospital.
Yes, in fact, there is the draft bill is called the Dominica Hospitals Authority Bill for the administration and management of hospitals and other health facilities and matters related thereto. So in the proposed draft, the Minister of Health has the power to designate a health facility. But in this case, that's going to be easy. This is Marigot. Obviously, we couldn't take all at one time. So we've started with PMH, but the understanding is as we do PMH, we gain some experience. We'll also be moving to
the Dominica-China friendship.
We got used into New National, and then Portsmouth, which is regional AMO, will also come. So yes, but in fact, from what we are reading and what we are seeing and what you mentioned, Marigot is going to have some considerable improvements in terms of facilities. So we will, of necessity, need to pay attention there as well.
So we have a situation now in Dominica where we have better health infrastructure. We have increased the services offered at the hospital. The MRI has been set up, a number of other high-tech equipment. We've also trained our people. So we have more Dominicans from postgraduate degrees at the hospital, manning the hospital. we continue to train nurses and specialize and so forth. So what is really missing now is this critical component of the management of it, and this is going to be like the epicenter.
Yep. It's going to be the engine that moves it. Yeah.
The engine.
So it's going to be systemic. I had an old professor teaching health administration. He says you can have the best doctors and a facility in the world. If a patient have to wait 4 hours to see a doctor, that's not quality care. If a patient surgery have to be canceled, elective surgery have to be canceled because the doctor not available, that's not quality care. So these are important. So it's systemic. So if Dr. Williams cannot make that surgery and the patient is already prepared, somebody else have to take it on. And that is what we mean by quality care. It's all patient-oriented. The patient must always be considered when making decision at a hospital. And that is what you have asked is important. The hospital management will be right there. So when they make the decision, it benefits the patient. It must always benefit the patient.
Actually, some years ago, I suggested that the administrative arm of the Ministry of Health should be located on the...
but the system would still hold it up, huh? You need to break that up.
We really have to cut this tentacle.
Yes.
But we're certainly continuing. There's been a lot of work going on. In fact, we have spent quite some time. We had a consultant assist us in taking a good hard look. That's why I can speak about certain units or departments preparing certain procedures, and you send it to the wards. What comes back is different. So we had a consultant have a look at the actual functioning of each of these departments: housekeeping, laundry, dietary, maintenance. But we also have gone further. We have also traced or tracked, followed through the process of admission from the time you arrive at A&E to the ward. What happens? And that's why these procedures are going to be so important, because part of the work we've been doing is to set up systems and procedures. So if you had asked me 6 months ago, what happens to the patient when he or she arrives at a casualty? We'll be struggling. Now we have that documented. And so we can see the gaps. We can assign people so that if you're waiting at casualty A&E for a certain period, we will be able to say why. And the whole arrangements that we say will need to change so that you understand, if you come in because it is chest pain, there must be a protocol to say you're dealing with a chest pain patient before you're dealing with someone who probably has knee. All of these things are required, and they're going to be very important. Now, at present, no such thing exists. And even where some procedures, some attempts were made to set these into motion, keeping to them, enforcing them have been problematic.
We'll take this final question from the public, and then I'll ask you another question, and we'll close with this segment. So, good evening, PM. Can you give me a timeline as to when do we expect the bill to be taken to Parliament? As you had indicated, it would come to Parliament in September.
In June, you said that.
And
that was no advice.
That was optimistic.
That was no advice. What we've seen, PM, though, is we have, and you were behind this as well, it has taken longer because we are consulting much more than we had anticipated. I said 40-something groups 47 groups were invited consultation by Zoom. And we also went with public information sessions. So we believe that there is now the engagement of the union. This coming week we will meet. It will take us 2 weeks to meet all the different categories of staff. We will again invite the union to come face to face. We've done that a couple of times. So our best guess, we're probably maybe ready to come back to the cabinet, to you, about the end of October. About the end of October. Well, we are hoping, and this is something we need to feel.
That's fine. That's fine. The most important thing is for us to consult the various parties, the stakeholders, and get their feedback, so that when we go to Parliament, we would have all of this understanding set aside. The final question is, what is next on the agenda of the Commission?
Well, a few things. The first one is
Need to hire.
We need to speak, but perhaps off here we can continue that discussion. Next on the agenda has to do with the hiring of the CEO, the enactment of the legislation, because without that there are a number of things that we cannot do. The appointment of the board, because we're an interim board, we are not appointed on the law, and you couldn't do that until it's done. So it's really
and the monitoring of the new phases in the structures.
That we're coming back to you with that. Yes,
So,
and the consultations. So to put it simply, the work is going to continue to ensure that the legislation can be enacted following the detailed consultations. And once that is in place, then new activities will follow, because for many of them, we actually need to have the legislation in place.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Dr. Peters, I think I could speak on behalf of the country. The country certainly appreciate the contribution of yourselves, the Commission. There's been a lot of work, I'm aware of it, and the commitment and the passion which all of you are bringing to this effort is commendable. And I think the country, if we're able to get through the consultation and get to Parliament and have this new structure effected, every citizen and resident of Dominica will benefit from this.
That's true.
We're not proposing perfection, but certainly we're proposing an improvement and seeking to respond to the criticisms and the concerns of the Dominican public. And health is important, a major priority for us as a nation. We're investing in new health centers, new hospitals, new equipment, additional training. But certainly we have to address the issue of management and making it more efficient and more effective. And we are confident that if this legislation is allowed to go through and the structure is able to be put in place, we can see an improvement in the services which we provide to our citizens. This has to be a collective national effort. Let us all work together towards it. I want to thank again His Excellency Mr. Edward Williams and of course Dr. Donald Peters of the Commission. Thank you, gentlemen, and do have yourself a wonderful rest of the evening.
Yes, thank you, sir. Don't watch football.
Thank you.
Yes,
We will take a short break and get back to you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
No, we have.
Okay, welcome back. Let me take the opportunity to extend sincere birthday wishes to my friend Mrs. Mary Williams of La Plaine, who currently resides in Castle Comfort. I wish you God's continued blessings and as you celebrate your birthday. We celebrate with you and we will continue to pray for you as you pray for me. Thank you. I also want to send out greetings to my friend Sogo Fly, Peter Thomas, who is not feeling well, and I had the opportunity to visit him at his residence, and I was happy to see him, still in high spirits, my wonderful friend and comrade for so long, and I pray that you will recover quickly and successfully. So we'll continue to pray for you and for your speedy recovery. And also, I want to send out greetings to my friend, Miss John, who is at the hospital with the broken leg, and I'm hoping to visit you sometime this week, okay? Wish you continued blessings. Of course, we just had a discussion with the Health Commission on the bills that are before us. And my hope is that if we are sincere about our engagement, let us put our suggestions in writing to the Commission. What is it that we do not like about the bill? What are our counter suggestions? How do we see the bill being improved, and what recommendations we have to have the bill improved? So we need to put this forward. But there's, we have to try our best sometimes to have discussions that on the greater good of the country, and where we can engage other with sincerity and honesty. And I'm hoping that we can see this engagement on this hospital authority bill. I would also like to extend again my condolences to the family of late Rita Robin of Marigot. We laid her to rest on Friday, and I was happy to be present. It was a very solemn moment. I've known Rita for a very long time, since 1999, thereabout. A very strong supporter of the Dominica Labour Party. Very, very committed. If all my supporters were like Rita, then I wouldn't have any problem winning all seats in Dominica. But very committed lady, very sincere, very, always would send some very positive, encouraging words. And I pray that her family will stay together, and that's to say to the family that we shall be there with them and for them. Certainly she's in a better place, and we'll continue to remember her in our thoughts and wonderful memories which we had of her. We're looking forward to the week. As I said earlier during the discussion with the chairman of the Government Housing Board, we are in the budget which was just passed. We made a number of announcements and articulated a number of policy initiatives. One, we have put in place an amnesty for those who owe taxes, all forms of taxes, including VAT, to waive the penalty and interest on this. The current law, the VAT, doesn't allow the government to do so, but we are going to Parliament to allow for this to happen. We're hoping that people can take advantage of this opportunity to save themselves from the payment of huge sums of interest and penalties. We also have provided proposals to reduce on the government's transfer fees in respect to property and the acquisition of properties, all an effort to facilitate as many Dominicans as possible, people who want to invest in their private homes or private properties, or people who want to invest in a project or property from a business standpoint. It's not because we're not doing this because we have a lot of money. It's because we would like to continue the empowerment of people, especially in this very difficult period. And so there are a number of initiatives there. The loans that we'll be putting at the Aid Bank on lending to small and medium-sized enterprises. We'll continue with a commitment. Our students studying overseas, we'll continue a commitment to them. Obviously, going forward, we need to put a better structure in place, a more transparent structure of application and approval, so that there can be greater certainty on the part of students and on the part of the Ministry of Education as to what we're dealing with. And we're hoping that very soon we will articulate that new structure. And certainly everybody will benefit more from this because there'll be greater clarity, greater transparency in the whole process. Housing, as you know, will continue our efforts to assist in. We have a windows and doors program where we're providing windows and doors at the community level to people who are in need of those, to ensure that we can all be in a comfortable space. We just handed over homes in Grand Bay on last week, gone. Some 30 homes of 30 families are sleeping in a better accommodation tonight than they were on Tuesday night. We also handed over 30 residences in Jimmet. In Jimmet, and every one of these people who would have received a key will certainly have their accommodation improved. And this is our commitment. You've heard from the Government Housing Loan Board how many loans have been granted since I became the Minister of Finance in 2004, and how much monies have been loaned to public officers since 2004. And there's a proposal before the Minister of Finance for additional $25 million to allow this to happen. And when I said, and when we reduced the interest rate, and people criticize us about the government building too many homes. But there are a number of benefits to the government investing in these homes. We have people and I believe, I have maintained that the gateway to fighting poverty is through proper housing and sanitation. And that is a variable that has to be addressed when it comes to fighting poverty. And many countries, if you look at the history of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew concentrated heavily on housing, raising the people from abject poverty and almost like a crusade, taking people to their new residences. And we believe that housing is critical. Improved sanitation is important in addressing indigence and other levels of poverty in our country. And so people are being elevated. But the investments in the private sector, the purchase of building materials and supplies and plumbers and electricians and tile placers, tile men and so forth, and carpenters and masons, So construction is very important. So with housing, you're addressing a number of very important challenges. And this will continue. There are a number of communities where we have to concentrate on housing. We have also the World Bank Housing Project. We had the coordinator of the project implementation unit there last week, articulating a number of very important developments in this area. I'm hoping very soon to go to Collyho and Platmapier to hand over the homes that are under construction. I've been advised by the Ministry of Housing that they'll need about a week or so to finalize the outstanding works, and also to articulate the plans for the government to continue the housing intervention in Platmapier to address the housing situation confronting the community of Collyho and, of course, Biosh and Tubla. And very soon we shall go to Roseau North in Stock Farm, where we have some 30 apartment units that have been completed there. We're going through the process of finalizing the list of beneficiaries. Once we've done that, we'll certainly move to quickly hand over those homes to those residents. I urge us to continue to be diligent, to follow the guidelines and the protocols set forth by the Ministry of Health. The numbers have increased, but this is expected. People coming in, they tested positive. Thank God they get tested at the airports. And for the hotspots, we allow people to go to quarantine, and so that we minimize the opportunity for any need for contact to be made between that affected person and others and so on. This is where the concern is. So I really want to commend the Ministry of Health, the health officials at the airports and the ports. There was a concern about the people coming on the cargo boats and, of course, the barges. So we, in the Ministry of Health, has put in place and are putting in place some added guidelines and measures to ensure we can close the risk gap as we've identified a couple of weeks ago. And so as time goes by, we will continue to review our protocols. We have sat with the private sector, the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association. I must commend them and the DIC for the strong working relationship and the partnership, and that will continue as we seek to navigate through this very difficult period. And as I've said, we have to continue to find a responsible and reasonable approach to COVID-19. We need to allow people to come into the country. We need to allow tourists to come in, visitors to come in, so that we can generate economic activity and people can go back to full-time employment. And so I believe that there are smart ways, and we have been able to work out with the AIC and the DHTA a responsible and sensible approach to COVID-19. Because the point is, if we're saying that COVID-19 is going to be with us for the next 2 years, what are we going to do? We have been able to send our students back. There are countries in the Caribbean that are trying it out. We've done so successfully so far, thank God. I want to commend the parents and the teachers and the Ministry of Education for their efforts. Let us continue to be vigilant as we work through this process. Let us go forth and serve our Lord and to serve our country. Dominica is ours. It's a difficult period, but we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We can't be daunted by the task. If there are difficulties, we have to work harder, and recommit ourselves to our country's development. And if we just continue to be diligent and trust in the Lord and trust in our efforts, we can overcome. We have overcome greater challenges, though COVID-19 is a serious one. But we're not daunted by this, moving forward. And of course, we're working on the efforts with the international airport. God bless you, and I will see you next week. I believe next week, I believe that I've been asking all the questions for several weeks now, and I'm hoping that I could have some panelists who will come in to ask me questions, a wide range of questions, any question you ask. I promise not to come with, I will not know the questions, I don't know, but we will engage ourselves in a mutually respectful encounter where I'll be turning the tables, so to speak, by allowing questions to be asked of me rather than me asking the questions for this particular Anupali episode. Thank you very much. God bless you. Good night. Let's love each other. Let us be each other's keeper. Thank you. God bless.
In the hurricane season, here are some tips to keep your families and communities safe. Before a hurricane, ensure that you know your emergency shelters. Contact the Office of Disaster Management for information on shelters closest to you. Have disaster supplies on hand, non-perishable canned food and water, portable battery-operated radios, flashlights and extra batteries, essential medicines, first aid kits, cash and bank cards. In the home, protect your windows. A low-cost approach is to put up plywood panels. Trim branches away from your home and cut all dead or weak branches on any trees on your property. Check into your home and auto insurance. Confirm that policies are valid and coverage is appropriate. Make arrangements for pets and livestock. Develop an emergency communication plan. Make sure that all family members know what to do. Teach family members how and when to turn off gas, electricity, and water. During a hurricane watch, listen to the radio or television for hurricane progress reports. Avoid open flames such as candles and kerosene lamps as a source of light. If power is lost, turn off major appliances to reduce power surge when electricity is restored. Store drinking water in clean jugs, bottles, and cooking utensils. During a hurricane warning, if you need to evacuate your home, lock up and go to the nearest shelter. Take blankets or sleeping bags to the shelter. Listen constantly to a radio or television for official instructions. Store valuables and personal papers in a waterproof container on the highest level of your home. stay inside, away from windows and glass doors.